Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Alec, and up there is Hannah's Hands.
Ooh.
Hi, Hannah's Hands. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Doing pretty good. Why are you just hands?
Well, you see, today we're doing a special video. We are doing a fun Christmas art special.
That sounds pretty cool.
Woo.
What kind of Christmas art special are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about the kind where you, Alec, you are going to be reading a story, a Christmas story that neither of us have ever heard before. And then I am supposed to draw a picture that encapsulates the whole story somehow. And I have the time from when you start to when you finish the story to get it done.
Gotcha. So that means I can't read extremely fast.
No. Please don't.
So space out my phrasings a little bit. Maybe.
That would be great.
Maybe.
Don't read like a turtle, but don't read like a rabbit either.
I want to put a British accent on for this.
I would love that.
Yes. That sounds like fun. I think this will be an interesting video myself because I like stories, I love Christmas, and this is an interesting take that we can put on it. So let's see how it goes, shall we?
It's definitely going to be a fun challenge. What story are you going to be reading today, Alec?
So the story that I'm going to be reading today is actually called The Gift of the Magi, or Magi, or something, but I'm going to call it Magi just because I like it the most that way.
Ooh.
So it is by O. Henry. Oh, Henry.
Oh, Henry?
Yes.
That's it?
Yep. O. Henry.
Nice. I like it.
Yep. All right. So on the count of 3, I will start.
All right.
I'm just kidding. I'm not counting to 3.
2, 7.
The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. $1.87. That was all. And 60 cents of it was pennies. Pennies saved 1 and 2 at a time by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until one's cheek burned with the silent imputation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. 3 times Della counted it, $1.87. And the next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and howl. So Della did, which instigates the moral reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles, and smiles, with sniffles predominating. While the mistress of the home is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second, take a look at the home. A furnished flat at $8 per week. It did not exactly beg a description, but it certainly had that word on the lookout for the Mendicani squad. That one. In the vestibule below was a letterbox into which no letter would go, and an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Also appertaining thereunto was a card bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. Cough, cough, Mr. James Dillingham Young. The Dillingham had been flung into the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming D, but whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim, and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you as Della, which is all very good. Della finished her cry and attended to her cheeks with a powder rag. She stood by the window and looked out dully at a gray cat walking a gray fence in the gray backyard. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she only had $1.87, with which to buy Jim a present. She had been saving every penny she could for months, with this result. $20 a week doesn't go far. Expenses had been greater than she had calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him. Something rare and fine and sterling. Something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. There was a pier glass between the windows of the room. Perhaps you have seen a pier glass in an $8 flat. A very thin and very agile person may, by observing his reflection in a rapid sequence of longitudinal strips, obtain a fairly accurate conception of his looks. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly, she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds. Rapidly, she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now, there were 2 possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs, in which they had both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that has been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Had the Queen of Sheba lived in the flat across the airshaft, Della would have let her hair hang out the windows some day to dry just to depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gifts. Had King Solomon been the janitor, with all his treasures piled up in the basement, Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed, just to see him pluck his beard from envy. So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her rippings and shining like a cascade of brown waters. It reached below her knee and made itself almost a garment for her. And then she did it up again nervously and quickly. Once she faltered for a minute and still stood while a tear or 2 splashed on the torn red carpet. On went her old brown jacket, and went on her old brown hat. With a whirl of skirts and with a brilliant sparkle in her eyes, she fluttered out the door and down the stairs to the street, where she stopped and the sign read, M.N.E. Sifroni, hair goods of all kinds. 1 flight up Della ran and collected herself, panting. Madam, large, 2 white, chilly, hardy-looking, the Sifroni. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Madam. Take your hat off and let's see the sight at the look of it. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madam, lifting the mass with a practiced hand. Give it to me quick, said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. Forget the hashed metaphor. She was ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the stores, and she had turned all of them inside out. It was a platinum fob chain, simple and chaste in design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone and not by meretricious ornamentation. As all good things should do, it was even worthy of the watch. As soon as she knew that it must be Jim's. It was like him, quietness and value. The description applied to both. $21 they took from her for it, and she hurried home with the 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes looked at it on the sly on account of the old leather straps that he used in place of a chain. When Della reached home, her intoxication gave way a little to prudence and reason. She got out her curling irons and lighted the gas and went on to work repairing the ravages made by generosity added to love, which was always a tremendous task, dear friends, a mammoth task. Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with tiny, close-lying curls that made her look wonderfully like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, long, carefully, and critically. If Jim doesn't kill me, she said to herself, before he takes a second look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat in the corner of the table near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his step on the stairway down on the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit for saying a little silent prayer every time about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please, God, make him think I am still pretty." The door opened and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22, and to be burdened with a family. He needed a new overcoat, and he was without gloves. Jim stopped inside the door, as immovable as a setter at the scent of quail. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly with that peculiar expression on his face. Della wriggled off the table and went for him. "Jim, darling," she cried, "don't look at me that way. I've had my hair cut off and sold because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It'll grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I've got for you. You've cut off your hair, asked Jim, laboriously, as if he had not arrived at that patient fact yet, even after the hardest mental labor. Cut it off and sold it, said Della. Don't you like me just as well anyhow? I'm me without my hair, ain't I? Jim looked around the room curiously. You say your hair is gone, he said, with an air almost of idiocity. You needn't look for it, said Della. It's sold, I tell you, sold and gone, too. It's Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me, for it went for you. Maybe the hairs of my head were numbered, she went on with a sudden, serious sweetness, but nobody could ever count my love for you. Shall I put the chops on, Jim? Out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He enfolded his Della. For 10 seconds, let us regard with discreet scrutiny some inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week or $1 million a year. What is the difference? A mathematician wit would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. This dark assertion will be illuminated later on. Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it upon the table. Don't make any mistake, Dell, he said. About me, I don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut or a shave or a shampoo that could make me like my girl any less. But if you'll unwrap that package, you may see why you had me going for a while at first. White fingers and nimble tore of the string and paper. And then an ecstatic scream of joy, and then, alas, a quick feminine change to hysterical tears and wails, necessitating the immediate employment of all the comforting powers of the lord of the flat. For there lay the combs, the set of combs side and back that Della had worshipped long in a Broadway window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoise shell, with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in her beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers. But the tresses that should have adorned the coveted adornment were gone. But she hugged them to her bosom, and at length she was able to look up with dim eyes and a smile and say, My hair grows so fast, Jim. And then Della leaped up like a little singed cat and cried, Oh, oh! Jim had not yet seen his beautiful present. She held it out to him eagerly upon her open palm. The dull precious metal seemed to flash with a reflection of her bright and ardent spirit. Isn't it dandy, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me a watch. I want to see how it looks on it. Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down the couch and put his hands under the back of his head and smiled. Dell, he said, let's put our Christmas presents away and keep 'em a while. They're too nice just to use as presents. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs, and now suppose you put the chops on. The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the babe in a manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege in exchange of case of duplication. And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that all who give gifts, these two were the wisest. O all who give and receive gifts, such as they are wisest. Everywhere they are wisest. They are the Magi. The end.
No!
All right.
Oh, no.
What do we come up with? Let's see it.
Oh, no.
Spin the hands.
Okay,
Move
so
'em.
to be completely honest, so when you first said the title of this story, I did not know. I was like, what the heck is that? And then as you started reading, I was like, oh no, I totally know this story. And so I was drawing little things here and there, and I was like, wait, no, that's not it. And so I started drawing the actual thing. Man, but I bet if I was just sketching, totally would have finished. But here's this sad little drawing for you guys. It's totally unfinished. I have their faces lined and nothing else. I have sketches though. He has a box in his hand with a hairbrush, and then she has the chain in her hand, and they're looking at each other. But man, that was way shorter than I thought, and I totally failed.
Yeah.
But
Hannah likes to get caught up in the details instead of just going for a very flat
But hey,
drawing, and that's also what this challenge is here to help with. So.
yes. So
what we're going to do is we're going to have her finish that, and I'm going to post a picture at the end of this, what it will look like officially. But this is what she came up with within the matter of the time that I
If we do
did
this
so
again, now I know what I'm...
I actually do think we're going to actually make this a 2-part thing. So the first part is going to be this one. We're going to put the picture in between, and then we're going to do another one this time so she knows how fast things can actually be and what she needs to cut down on. And if we can get a picture that's just kind of all over the place and fantastic. So stay tuned for that. Here's the picture that we're going to be putting up. So there you go.
There you go.
And we're back. How'd you guys like that photo? I thought it was pretty good, personally. So it was a cute little thing. Hopefully this time, though, we can get that done before the story's up.
Yeah.
But then again, artistry is pretty hard.
It'll
So,
be
I
better.
mean, I think she did pretty well with the time that she had. So
The story was a lot shorter than I anticipated. So, yeah,
well,
hopefully.
be ready for this one, because this one is shorter, because I have a total of technically 3 stories all in the same genre.
Oh.
Also, disclaimer now for this next one. It is by the Brothers Grimm. If you've ever heard about them, they are the ones who wrote the original fairy tales, which means this can be a little, like, on the twisted side, or kind of, like, how would we say that? Demented? I don't know.
Just
Something of that sort. That's just a little
bit of dark.
darker
A little
than
bit of dark
usual.
stuff.
The last one was definitely not dark. This one might be dark. I haven't read this one personally myself. But just be aware of that, just in case there are other kids in the room, and you do not want them to hear it. That's okay. You may click it off and just listen to the first part. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into it then, shall we? So, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right.
Let's do
This one is called The Elves and the Shoemaker.
Oh.
I personally have heard a version of this, but it wasn't the original by the Brothers Grimm, so I'm excited to read this one. Okay. Here we go.
Let's go.
The Elves and the Shoemaker by the Brothers Grimm. First story. A shoemaker by no faults of his own had become so poor that at last he had nothing left but leather for 1 pair of shoes. So in the evening he cut out the shoes which he wished to begin to make the next morning. And as he had a good conscience, he lay down quietly in his bed, commended himself to God, and fell asleep. In the morning, after he said his prayers, he was just going to sit down to work. The 2 shoes stood quite finished on his table. He was astounded, and knew not what to say to it. He took the shoes in his hands to observe them closer, and they were so neatly made that there was not one bad stitch in them, just as if they were intended as a masterpiece. Soon after, a buyer came in, and as the shoes pleased him so well, he paid more for them than the customary, and with the money the shoemaker was able to purchase leather for 2 pairs of shoes. He cut them out at night, and the next morning was about to set to work with fresh courage, but he had no need to do so, for when he got up they were already made, and buyers also were not wanting, who gave him money enough to buy leather shoes for 4 pair of shoes. The following morning, too, he found the 4 pairs made, and so it went on constantly, and he cut out in the evening was finished by the morning, so that he soon had his honest independence again, and at last became a wealthy man. Now it befell that one evening not long before Christmas, when the man had been cutting out, he said to his wife before going to bed, "What do you think if we were to stay up tonight to see who it is that lends us this helping hand?" The woman liked the idea and lighted a candle, and why do you say lighted? It's lit. And lit a candle.
Lighted?
And then they hid themselves in a corner of the room, behind some clothes which were hanging up there, and watched. When it was midnight, 2 pretty little naked men sat down by the shoemaker's table, took all the work which was cut out before them, and began to stitch and sew and hammer so skillfully and so quickly with their little fingers that the shoemaker could not turn away his eyes for astonishment. They did not stop until all was done, and stood finished on the table, and they ran quickly away. The next morning the woman said, "The little men have made us rich, and we really must show it we are grateful for it. They run about so, and have nothing on, and must be cold. I'll tell thee what I'll do. I will make them little shirts and coats and vests and trousers, and knit both of them a pair of stockings, and do thou too, make them 2 little pairs of shoes." The man said, "I shall be very glad to do it." And one night, when everything was ready, they laid their presents all together on the table, instead of the cut-out work, and then concealed themselves to see how the little men would behave. At midnight they came bounding in, and wanted to get to work at once, but as they did not find any leather cut out, but only the pretty little articles of clothing. They were at first astonished, and then they showed intense delight. They dressed themselves with the greatest rapidity, putting the pretty clothes on and singing, "Now we are boys so fine to see, why should we longer cobblers be?" Then they danced and skipped and left over chairs and benches. At last they danced out of doors. From that time forth they came no more, but as long as the shoemaker lived, all went well with him, and all his undertakings prospered. Second story. There was once a poor servant girl who was industrious and cleanly, and swept the house every day and emptied her sweepings on the great heap in the front of the door. One morning when she was just going back to her work, she found a letter on this heap, and as she could not read, she put her broom in the corner and took the letter to her master and mistress. And behold, it was an invitation from the Elves, who asked the girl to hold a child for them at its christening. The girl did not know what to do, but at length, after much persuasion, and as they told her that it was not right to refuse an invitation of this kind, she consented. Then 3 elves came and conducted her to a hollow mountain where the little folks lived. Everything there was small, but more elegant and beautiful than can be described. The baby's mother lay in a bed of black ebony ornamented with pearls. The coverlids were embroidered with gold. The cradle was of ivory, the bath of gold. The girl stood as godmother, and then wanted to go home again, but the little elves urgently entreated her to stay 3 days with them. So she stayed and passed the time in pleasure and gaiety, and the little folks did all they could to make her happy. At last she set out on her way home. Then first they filled her pockets quite full of money, and after that they let her out of the mountain again. When she got home, she wanted to begin her work, and took the broom, which was still standing in the corner, in her hand and began to sweep. Then some strangers came out of the house, who asked her who she was and what business she had there, and she had not, as she thought, been 3 days with the little men in the mountains, but 7 years, and in the meantime her former masters have died. Third story. That was a weird second story, that's for sure. A certain mother's child has been taken away out of its cradle by the elves, and a changeling with a large head and staring eyes, which would do nothing but eat and drink, laid in its place. In her trouble she went to a neighbor and asked her advice. The neighbor said that she was to carry the changeling into the kitchen, set it down on the hearth, light a fire, and boil some water into eggshells, which would make the changeling laugh. And if he laughed, all would be over with. The woman did everything that her neighbor bade her. When she put the eggshells in the water on the fire, the imp said, "I am as old now as the Wester Forest, but never yet have I seen anyone boil anything in an eggshell," and he began to laugh at it. Whilst he was laughing, suddenly came a host of little elves who brought the right child, set it down on the hearth, and took the changeling away with them. The end.
Are you serious?
What did we get?
Those were super short.
They were shorter.
And, I mean, so I did a simpler drawing.
Hey.
But I think we should do, like, a tiny little time lapse of me just at least outlining these last little things. I think everyone will appreciate it.
That's a good idea. How about you just do it, and then I'll make there a time lapse over the top of this.
Sounds great.
So I will talk back with you guys as soon as that is finished and the time lapse has been done. Well, that should be the end of the time lapse, hopefully, because it still wasn't enough time, because this one was actually really short.
This one
a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be, too.
Way shorter than the other one, too. But
yeah,
still cute.
Good length of a video if you guys want to listen to some stories, but really hard for an artist to get something that fast, that quick. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
at least for me. Because some artists out there are like super quick, and I just am not there yet. So this is actually kind of, I mean, these challenges kind of help me with that too.
yes.
But yeah.
So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked that, go ahead and give us a like, subscribe, comment, etc. And go ahead and, like, I don't know, just be good people.
Yeah.
Be good people. It's Christmas. Hopefully, if you guys are watching this today, it's Christmas. Christmas is fantastic. Go have fun with your families. Go love each other. Be Christmas. Do Hanukkah. Happy holidays. Do whatever you want. We love you all, and we will see you guys next time. Have a fantastic day. Bye.
Bye.